So I've went over the introduction and the syllabus. You guys have that information. Let's talk, jump right in. Let's talk about defining public speaking, understanding the process of public speaking, because there is a process involved. And we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety in public speaking, because many people suffer through this. So public speaking, the book defines it as an organized, face-to-face, prepared, intentional, or purposeful attempt to inform, entertain, or persuade a group of people, 5 or more usually, through your words, your physical delivery, and at times visual or audio cues. In most cases, the speaker is the focus of the attention for a specific period of time. That's what public speaking really is. And I can see why, when we stand in front of a crowd where people can get scared, frightened, taken off their game. It can happen. I was blessed. I was an athlete first. Can't say first. I guess I was a student first, and then became an athlete. I got to play 2 years of minor league baseball, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I had the ability to tune out the crowd. I was very good at that. So to me, the transition to public speaking was really easy because I just tune them out, except that I don't. Meaning, I can tune out their noise, but I use their noise to alert me. Their noise can tell me if people are interested, if people are restless, if people are bothered. So the book tells us that public speaking is, again, an organized, face-to-face, intentional or purposeful attempt to inform, to entertain, or persuade. It's a group of people, usually 5 or more, through my words, through your words. That's what we would be doing. Our physical delivery, and perhaps audio and visual cues. Now, I want you to take a moment, and I want you, because I'm going to respond to a couple texts on my phone, but I want you to think about this question. How do you feel about public speaking? How do you feel about it? So take a moment. I want you guys to email me this. I'm going to take a picture of it too, so I make sure that I post it. I want you to email me. How do you feel about public speaking? What are your thoughts? I want you to give me a few sentences about what it is about public speaking that you either like, dislike, or ambivalent to, meaning don't care. Most of you are going to talk about this, and that's okay. I appreciate it, and I can understand the fear. I will tell you this, the fear goes away the more you practice and the more you know your material, the better it is to speak. Because you won't be as fearful, because you know your end, and now all you have to do is worry about, well, how is my audience going to receive this? Well, if you've thought about those things, and we're going to talk about that later on in a different unit, but when we think about our audience and we tailor our message to our audience should receive it well. And if our audience receives it well, why are we worried, right? Most of the time we're psyching ourselves out. But let's talk about it though. Anxiety is a real thing. And public speaking and anxiety go together. In fact, so much so that we have glossophobia, which is a severe fear of public speaking. Now, I have taught this course for, goodness gracious, this is my 5th year. and not just here. I've taught this course probably in 5 years. Let's see, 5 years. I've taught this course conservatively 25 times. All right, 25 times conservatively. I probably am wrong. I'm probably closer to 30. I didn't feel like doing a lengthy math equation right in front of you. That's just silly. So 25 times, I've only had 3 students have true glossophobia. 2 passed out on me. 2 passed out on me. One of them ran out the door in fear. Okay? The reality is we usually don't have a true phobia about public speaking. We're just fearful. We're just a little anxious, right? And most of that anxiety comes from these ideas that we put in our own head, unfortunately. Many times we have this idea of we are thinking about things as an all or nothing. I'm either going to ace this or I'm going to fail this. The reality is we call C an average grade, right? As teachers. Do you know why we do that? Because that's where many people fall within the spectrum of grading. You have people that are more successful and people that are a little bit less successful in the grading. And in that, we come up with an average, meaning the world is not built on all or nothing. We either succeed or we fail. And when we succeed, it's great. And when we fail, we can learn from it. Failing is part of life. Many times we get so fearful because failure is deemed as this horrible thing. But the reality is, we all fail. I'm not telling you we're losers. We're not. We're not losers at all. But by failing, we learn to do better the next time. And that's important. So the idea of all or nothing thinking is irrelevant to public speaking. We're not going to fail. I can honestly tell you, in all the speeches I've graded, I've only had 2 failing speeches. And those people didn't even try. And not to mention that 2 of them both of them were late. So that already put them in a bad position. So they already had a deduction of points because they were late on their speech. And then they didn't even give the speech they were supposed to give. That was the reality of it. What I'm telling you is, if you do the task that's set before you, you're going to be at least mildly successful and maybe vastly successful. Because I told you, most of my students do pretty well. Now, they don't start maybe necessarily as an A student in speeches, but they get better with every speech and every feedback. Another source of anxiety is we tend to think about our past experiences and hold ourselves to them, meaning we generalize about them. I gave horrible speech back in grade school, and then I did it again in junior high, and then somehow I got through high school without having to give a speech, and I hate giving speeches because I stink at it. That would be an overgeneralization, right? Past experience does not dictate future results. We've all heard that in commercials even. So when we think about this, there's probably reasons we felt less successful about our speeches. And we can start by learning from those situations. And I'm going to teach you about ways to set yourself up for success in public speaking. That's what this is all about. I'm going to help you get there. Many of us think we can tell the fortune. My wife is one of those people. She tells me when bad things are going to happen way before they ever happen. The problem with that, she's right about 40% of the time. And even then, it's usually not as dire as she predicted it. And I'm not making fun of my wife. Some of us see the world as glass half full. Some of us see the world as glass half empty. Right? That's just how we are. If you find you're a glass half empty person, please, as you find a life partner, Try to find that glass half full person to help balance you. That's my little piece of information. Because if you do that, it helps in many ways. Okay? It'll help you throughout life find a balance. Because us glass half full people sometimes over exaggerate the positivity of the situation. And we need somebody to give us a bit more perspective to bring us back down to a reality setting, right? We're not fortune tellers. I don't think any of you are. If you are, I need you to give me the lottery numbers for the next drawing, please. Send it to me in an email, and then I will believe you're a fortune teller after I buy a ticket. Okay? We're not fortune tellers. Now, we can create a bad situation where we fail. For example, I had a student tell me that they sent me an email saying that they weren't going to do well on a speech, and they didn't. But they also told me why they weren't going to do well. And they didn't do well on the speech. I got a C on it because they didn't take the time to prepare. They did a one-take speech, and they didn't practice at all. They ended up with like a C plus, actually. But to them, that was doing poorly, right? And they were fortune telling, and they were right, but they knew what they were doing wrong. They just didn't give themselves enough time to set up for the speech. Many of us think we have a fixed mindset about our intelligence. We're not smart, or we're not good at talking to people, we're not good around people, and therefore we can't be a public speaker. That is a bunch of baloney. I have a friend who suffers from social anxiety disorder, and he has had to give numerous speeches because he leads a division for a financial institution. He leads their IT division. He's worked his way into that position, and he always said, "I'm not good at speaking. I'm not good in front of people. I'm never going to be a leader. I can't do this work. I can't." And yet, over time, he's progressively gotten better and better and better and better. And he's around these people a lot. These are the people that work for him. So he's actually gotten pretty comfortable being around them. And because of that comfort and because of that experience over 25, 30 years now, 30 years almost. I guess he's at 28 years there. With that experience, he's gotten so much better. He still has some difficulties, especially around strange people he doesn't know. But one of the techniques he uses, and we're going to talk about more again as we get closer to speeches, is he focuses on people in the audience he knows likes him, and he likes them. Friends or business associates that he can trust. And he looks at them. As he's giving his speech, he looks at them. He doesn't focus like staring at them, but he looks at them. He goes from one to another, and he picks them out before he even starts a speech. Because he knows if he does that, he can get through his speech. He doesn't think about that there's 30 people under his employment that are all together in the speech. So think about it. There are ways to get around it. Just because you're not the smartest one in the class doesn't mean you're not going to be good at public speaking. When you talk about something you know, you have an inherent ability to speak about it, to educate us about it, to pass that intelligence along to us as the audience, and therefore you're setting yourself up for success. And we can learn anything if we are willing to do so. My life has been about learning. I never thought of it that way. But my first degree was in journalism, political science, minor in public relations. In that degree, I learned how to write, learned how to communicate. I learned how to work with politicians as a speechwriter, as a researcher. So it was kind of cool. Then I went back, went to the newspaper business after doing that and talked about these things to the public. My favorite, of course, was sports. This is all after I played minor league baseball. I went to school second. I kind of did life backwards. My life is not a working history on how one should succeed in life in a timely manner, because honestly, I've done the things I've done because things worked out. I worked in journalism for about 3 years, burned out very quickly, jumped over into corporate communications because one of my friends was working for a company, helped get me in the door, and then I moved on from there. I loved working in corporate communications. I loved working with advertising agencies and coming up with commercials and ideas. I worked in a very strict industry where the government regulates what can be advertised in the financial industry. I did that for quite a while. I transitioned, oddly enough, out of corporate communication into the world of sales. Was very successful at that, but I bored of it because I was reaching one person at a time, one family at a time, and I wanted to reach more people. We had an economic downturn. I went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree at 40 years old. And from that, I've been able to do so much more in my life. Education is key. Being willing to learn is the key. It's brought me to you guys, and I'm thankful for this. I enjoy teaching. I would consider teaching full time if the situation presented itself. I've yet to have that situation present itself. I've taught part time in 3 universities at one point, or 2 colleges and a university, and was technically teaching a full time load, but I was only getting paid part time at each one of the schools. That's when I decided I needed to, help my family out, especially since I have a stepdaughter that's about to enter college. I want to be able to do more economically for her. So that's why I've stepped away from teaching a bit. But the point is, I wouldn't have those opportunities if I would have went in with the, I'm a journalist. I'm only this, I'm only that. I was willing to learn, willing to try, willing to do. I'm not the best student in the world. I suffer from ADHD. I do my best to not allow interruptions in my life because that's one of my focal points of dealing with the disorder. And as I've gotten older, I've learned more and more techniques on how to get better at it. So we can all learn to do this. And if we practice, we can alleviate our anxiety. The last one here, fear of failure and rejection. Holy cow, we're all afraid of failure. None of us want to be rejected. But the beauty of this is we're doing this class online. You are not going to fail. Not if you're willing to put in the work, because I will help drag you through this course. Okay? I will teach you. I will get you through this. You have to do your work. I'm not going to tell you people haven't failed my course. They have. Most of the time, they put in little to no work, and I do mean little to no work. Like nothing. And I can't push you through a class if you're not willing to help yourself. So what I'm telling you is the failure rate for students that actually try this class is a 0. Because I'll help you get through. I'll help put you back on point, and I'll help you get better and better each week. I'm not going to reject you. You're one of my students. You need this class to graduate, right? So don't worry, relax. We'll get through this. It's not so bad. What's the worst that can happen? Even if we failed at this, we have the ability to retake it. No one's going to kill us. No one's going to put us in prison or anything bad, right? We live in a free culture where we don't have to worry about ramifications that exceed ourselves. Meaning, if you fail in China, think about that Chinese tennis star recently that's been kind of almost gone from public view. We don't have those kind of pressures, those kind of anxieties to deal with in our lives. So relax. You're not going to fail. I'm going to help you succeed, but I need your help to help yourself. How can I address my anxiety in public speaking? I want you to watch this YouTube video. I'm not going to take up your time with YouTube videos because they don't translate well in the recordings, okay? I want you to watch this one. This one is crucial. For those of you who say, oh my goodness, I'm so scared. I have anxiety. I don't know if I can do this. Watch this video. The coping mechanisms, it talks about it in chapter 1 in the book, but the coping mechanisms in this video are much better, much more deep. And I'll mention these coping mechanisms as we move through the course. The four best ways, the four ways I propose to address anxiety in public speaking. The biggest one, mental preparation. Focus on your message rather than yourself. Be realistic about the experience and what's at stake. You're giving me a speech for speech class. You need this class to pass, but the reality is, if you put forth the effort, your teacher says you'll do well enough. If you try hard, you'll do really well. Okay? Practice. In other words, mental preparation. Start by setting it off in your brain that I am going to give a good speech. I know the material. I can do this. I can do this. No one's going to hurt me. They're not going to throw me in prison. I'm not going to the dungeon. Right? Physical preparation. When we think about physical preparation, this is important because one person who passed out on me did not do this. They got themselves so worked up. And they didn't eat. And they didn't get a good night's sleep. So when we think about giving a speech, make sure you have a balanced diet with a little bit more emphasis in protein rather than sugar. Now, don't go super heavy on protein or carbs, because if you do that, you're going to go to sleep or you're going to be groggy. You're not going to be super ready to give the speech. If you go high sugar, you're going to be high energy and you're going to be like this. Oh my goodness gracious. Or even worse, if you go high sugar early in the day, and then you give your speech midday or in the evening, you're crashing. And then you're not going to be focused and give the best speech. I want you to sleep well the night before. I want you to think about that. Sleep well. Relax. Don't get yourself stressed. Practice, 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 and then sleep. That technique works. Wear comfortable enough clothes and shoes, but don't be giving speeches in sweatpants and sweatshirts. Come on, guys. Be respectful. Right? I don't expect you to dress up, but I do expect you to look the part. Look at me today. I didn't come in here in a t-shirt, right? Give me the same courtesy. I want you to think about utilizing stretching techniques like the Superman pose, where we put our hands on our hips and we put our chest out. And this works best when we're standing. So push our chest out and breathe deeply a few times. If you do that, it automatically resets your body. Some of our body chemistry changes with that pose, and we feel better about ourselves. Another way we can address anxiety in our public speaking is contextual preparation. And what I mean by that is go to the place or the venue. That's what venue means, the place where you'll be giving the speech. You're going to have the luxury of giving your speech from your home or wherever you choose. Know the place, know the circumstances, and think about your audience. Your audience, in this case, online, it's super easy. You're just giving a speech to me. So you're tailoring the speech to me. You're not having to think about, oh my goodness, I have to entertain 20 people, 30 people, right? So that takes a bit of the pressure off right there. Be early, be ready to give your speech. Some of you might choose to go into one of the classrooms that are empty and give your speech. I'm completely okay with that. I'm one of those people. It just so happens that I work in the Atlanta metro area. So for me to get to North Georgia Tech, it's an hour and 10-minute commute. So for me to get to the classroom, that's why I'm teaching this course online now. We need this course. We have no one else to teach it, so I'm here. I'm on it. I love it. This is what I do. I deliver messages. Now, I deliver message to thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people now. That's the choice I made by going back to school. And again, being open to change and open to learn. Speech preparation. This one is the most critical. Do not procrastinate. Think about what your speeches are coming up earlier than later. In February, we're going to start thinking about our first speech. It's not due till March, but we're going to start thinking about it in February. The kiss of death for a public speaker is procrastination. Sorry about that. I want you to practice the speech several times beforehand, then record yourself. Or record yourself every time and give me your best. One of the keys to public speaking, and I will throw it out, fake it till you become it. The goal is, many of us aren't born with this skill set. It's not an automatic. It's performing. So if you have performance art skills, if you've been an athlete, you'll do all right. If you were in acting or other classes, you'll do even better. But it's not a natural. So I want you to think about it. I want you to consider it. So fake it until you become it. Practice, 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 and then you'll nail it. You'll never look as nervous as you actually feel. Very few people stand up here and shake, right? That doesn't happen, although we'll feel like we're quaking inside. And if we're holding anything in our hands, that will be the tell. That's why the first speech, you shouldn't need any note cards to give me a speech about yourself. And if you do use note cards, put them down in front of you. Look at them as needed, but note cards. Don't read your speech. Don't say, hello, today I'm here to give you a speech about me. My name is Shawn Willard. I go by Michael. I have for years because legally I'm Michael Shawn Willard, but I chose Shawn in my grade school year. Do you see how difficult that is? Oh, it's like tedious and horrible. You don't want that. So don't read. Make sure you make notes, but don't read. So when we think about the process of public speaking, and this is a different book, but I'm going to bring it in. Stephen Lucas, in 2015, wrote, public speaking is an enlarged conversation, and it has some similarities to conversations, but it also has differences. As a conversation, the similar elements are awareness of and sensitivity toward your audience. Think about who you're talking to before you talk to them, right? It is an exchange of explicit messages about contents, facts, ideas, information. It is less about explicit ones, meaning the ones about relationship, about feeling, liking, trusting, those things. Public speaking is about just giving the delivery, making sure your audience accepts the message, and perhaps persuading them. And both of them still rely on feedback, because I look to my class to make sure that you understand. That's what the participation questions are all about. I want to make sure you're getting the material. Otherwise, I'm looking at you in a classroom and I see people nod or writing notes, and I see lost looks on students' faces, because we've been there. We all have been that student with the lost look and been like, oh my goodness, I don't even know. And a good teacher picks up on that and explains further, right? Public speaking is always face to face, right? Typically. It's rarely mediated through the computer, telephone, or mass media in our lives. Now, I teach people on how to present in a meaningful way through mass media. It's one of my things that my business model does. So I work with people who are looking to grow their audience, grow more followers, we'll say it that way, but not necessarily in a social media sense, like politicians. I've worked with athletes on how they can use their language more effectively so that they can get better interviews and honestly see less fines from their sport because the NFL's evil. It will fine you if you say things that they don't like, right? I want you to think about something. Why is face-to-face communication so intimidating in this world of mediated communication? I want you to think about that one as well. And if you feel you have a good answer, I don't even care if you think you have a good answer. I would like you to email me telling me why you feel that face-to-face communication is so intimidating. We live in a world of mediated communication, our phones, right? Even this class, I'm having to teach it in a mediated way. I hate that because I like to be face-to-face. But there's no way for me to do it. So I want you to think about that. When we look at public speaking as an enlarged conversation, which is okay to do, we need to think about the things that are most crucial. We have to be more purposeful. It's not just like talking with my friends about where we're going to go eat for lunch, right? Or when we're going to have a party. It has to be much more purposeful, public speaking does, than that. We have to be able to entertain, to inform, or persuade someone. And public speaking has to be highly organized with formal elements of organization, meaning an introduction, some points, and a conclusion, right? We're looking for that as an audience. We don't even think about we're looking for that, but we are. And we're usually dependent in public speaking on outside sources than our personal experience. Meaning, we have to have some research. We're going to talk about how to research coming up. The delivery has to be enlarged because if I'm talking to an auditorium of 1,000 people or more, I'm going to have to project my voice more. I'm going to make grander motions with my hands. Notice my hands are open, not pounding away on a podium or anything, right? We want not aggressive behavior. We want to make sure we're welcoming, bringing you in. So when we think about it, I want you to think about when you're giving me a speech, you're not just giving me a speech, but pretend you're at least giving it to a classroom of 20 or 30 students. Make sure you control your energy. Don't come in too high. Don't come in too low, right? Be the proper level of energetic. And think about being conscious of the formalities of the speech, meaning I want to give you an introduction. I want to make sure the points are clear for my audience. Make sure you don't have too many. We'll talk more about that as we get further along. And make sure we've got a conclusion. Please don't ever be that person that says, concluding, uses a concluding phrase like, in conclusion, and then talk for 5 more minutes. Don't do that. It's so evil to an audience. It's disrespectful, actually. When we think about the process of public speaking, and I would pay attention to this, let's talk about what communication is as a whole, because public speaking is a part of communication. But what is communication as a whole? Well, communication is simply sharing meaning between 2 or more people. That's it. I say that's it, but it's so deep, right? When we think about this, we're thinking about sharing experiences, sharing meaning, sharing information, knowledge. The 7 elements of communication are people, context, message, channel, noise, feedback, and outcome. Might want to pay attention to this. When we think about communication, when we have to think about communication because public speaking is part of communication, we do these things. We don't think about it every day, but we're involved in it. When we think about it, when we talk with our friends or family, we're talking to people we know. There's a context of our message, meaning we want something or need something or we're trying to communicate something, right? We're doing it through a spoken word or text. We're doing it through a channel, meaning verbally or non-verbally through our phone, perhaps, right? We're competing with noise. There's always noise around us everywhere we are. There's always noise. When we think about the idea of noise, noise isn't just physical sound, okay? Noise is the buzzing of my phone, perhaps, or noise is the fact that my screen just lit up on my phone about an email that I got from work, right? Or a text message that I got from my child. That's noise. It takes us away from what we're supposed to be doing. Noise can be one of the noises I had when I was teaching out of the Curry campus. They had us in a classroom that was closer to where the culinary arts part people were. And I taught the class right after a typical normal lunch hour, which we never want to say normal. As college students, we get our lunches when we get our lunches, right? But so it was like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would be baking cakes and delicious dishes and in 2 doors down, and the noise, in this case smell, would waft into our classroom, and it's so distracting because even if you have eaten, it smells delicious, right? And that's noise. It keeps us from thinking about what the message really is, what someone's trying to teach us. When we think about the feedback channel, encoding and decoding, I encode messages to you. I give you messages. I think about the words I use, that's encoding. Then you have to decode. Think about the words I say and create a meaning. You're the receiver, right? We trade off being senders and receivers in life. We trade off that role back and forth. If we're a good public speaker, we're going to look at our audience and adjust our speech because our audience might be getting restless or bored. And then that's what we call the feedback, right? That's our feedback. So when we think about that, we're taking that feedback and changing up our speech slightly, maybe rushing a bit to cover the material a little quicker, right? Or maybe when we see our audience struggling to grasp something, we're going to explain it more deeply, more fully. And then, lastly, we have outcome, meaning every speech, every communication we make, we have an intended outcome, right? We want something to happen. We want something to happen. So when we think about that, we have an intended outcome. We want to deliver a speech to communicate something. We want to talk with our parents to get them to buy us something or do something for us, right? Sorry, my computer started, the fan really kicked in and was really going. So the 7 elements of communication are good for not only just communication, but every aspect of communication, both nonverbal and verbal. They exist within those channels. So when we think about people, we're senders and receivers, meaning even though I'm giving you a class, I'm thinking about how you receive it, and I may change up my words, my language, my communication. But if I were doing it in front of a live audience, I'm definitely going to change it up because I'm going to take feedback from my audience and apply it to my speech. When we think about, context, everything we do in life has some sort of context, some sort of significance. Let's talk about that. We all bring our own context to a speech or to any communication. We bring our historical context, meaning what we've experienced in our life. We bring knowledge of history as well, perhaps. We bring cultural, meaning where many of us are citizens of the United States, we're Americans, for whatever that means, right? So we have a cultural way of doing things. I was blessed when I went back to school at 40 to get an internship in Paris, France, with a company, the largest advertising agency in the world. I'll just say it that way. Heidelberg Group. It was awesome. My wife got to go over for about 2 weeks. I was there for a month. It was awesome. I learned that in France, television ads, when we think about an hour worth of television in the United States, the TV show says it's an hour long, right? If it's an hour long show in the United States, that means that there's anywhere from 28 minutes to 32 minutes of actual programming. The rest of it is TV commercials. TV commercials. In France, if it's an hour-long show, 12 minutes of it's commercials. 48 minutes of actual programming. Meaning, you have to get your message across more efficiently and more effectively in a more memorable way. So I learned about culture. We bombard people in the United States with commercials, and honestly, they're lost on people many times. So culturally, we have a different way of doing things than the Parisians do. Social. This is our relationships with others, relationships within ourself, our own mental is going to come into play in physical, but we're going to talk about social. When we think about social, what has our experience been? When I look at this image, for instance, what does this image mean to you? It's a beautiful picture of a beautiful church, right? I took it on one of my many travels. But what does it mean to you? Is it just a building or is it something deeper? And that comes into our physical and our social. Social and physical kind of work together in this way. Meaning, if I've had positive experiences with my friends and family in church, I am going to view this picture more positively. If I have had a emotional or spiritual moment in a building like this, physically it's going to affect me. So I want you to think about the picture. What does it evoke within you? Public speaking has a tendency to do that as well when we think about affecting us. The third element, again, message. And I'm just going over these again to make sure that we understand it. Message is important because we need to choose the way to reach our audience that will be most effective. We don't want to waste their time or your time. In public speaking, we know what the message, we're choosing verbally through this conduit, right? Now, it may be informal at times. You respond to the audience. You see people are clapping for Trump there. So he stopped his speech and put his hands up like, yeah, right. He's feeling it. He's giving him a moment to respond to it. So he's being spontaneous about it. Or most of that speech was planned. Most of that speech was read off a teleprompter, right? So it was very formal, it was very intentional, very planned. One of the things I think about every year is what would happen if the president didn't give his State of the Union speech. He's required by the Constitution, actually, to give that speech. But what happens if he didn't? What if he chose not to give a speech and just walk away or take a day off? Right? It leaves all of us in the lurch. Now, most of us aren't sitting around, oh, I can't wait for the State of the Union speech, right? I might be a little bit of a dork because I actually want to like peruse it afterwards, but I don't really stay up to watch it or even choose my programming around it for that day. But I do look at the message the next day. And I do that because I want to see, I look for what's said and what's not said. But that's just me as a communicator. When we think about channel, the channel is how are we getting the message across? Most of the time in life, we're doing face to face, but then we do a lot of mediated nowadays, right? In fact, if we look at statistically how we communicate, we're leaning like 68% mediated communication currently in our lives. And that's kind of scary because you can't always get across nonverbals or emotions. Yes, we have emojis. I hate emojis, by the way. But they don't really truly convey what it is we're feeling inside. So, face to face is a very meaningful method of communication. It still contains a great deal of power. Because think about this, face to face, the audience is listening to you. Mediated, I'm getting messages to my phone, right? Emails, text, mediating. I answer them when I'm done with the class. I'm not bothered with them now. I have the power. The receiver in a mediated communication has all the power. Many of us know what I mean by that. Have you ever texted someone about something important? Maybe like feeling related, like, hey, do you like me? Or do you want to go out? And then they didn't respond for hours, if not days? If that's not power, I don't know what is. You could literally crush someone, right? By not being respectful. So one of the things I would encourage you to do, even though it's not part of the prerequisite of this course, please be courteous in your communication to others. Please. Face-to-face adds that urgency, the immediacy, and it's linear, meaning I give you a message, I look for feedback from you that you've received the message. When we think about feedback channels, and I'm going to cover this more coming up later in the class with nonverbal communication. We have two channels of feedback, verbal and nonverbal. If I say, do you guys understand? And you say, yes, that's verbal. If you nod your head, that's nonverbal, right? A good speaker is looking at nonverbal cues, body cues. For instance, where my students' feet are positioned has some idea on whether or not they're getting my intended message, whether or not they're still with me. Think about your feet right now, from wherever you're at. Where are they pointed? If your feet are pointed away from the computer, away from your device, or towards the door in a classroom, I know exactly what you're feeling. You want to be done with this. You've put in your time and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how much longer is this going to go? Right? Our bodies give away so much information. And if you get good at reading it, you can tailor your messages even better. When we think about the 7 elements, we're getting there. Almost done for class 1, for chapter 1. 7 elements of communication. 6th element is noise. Again, these are the things that bother us, that get in the way of us receiving our information. There's contextual. Again, something in the room or the environment keeps us from receiving a message fully. Think about this. If the air conditioner is loud or noisy, or the room's too cool, too warm, right? that can have a bearing on whether or not we receive the message. If you hear somebody talking in the back of the classroom, that can create noise or difficulty for you to receive that information. When we think about physical, how do we feel today? Are we good? Do we feel well? Are we tired? Are we hungry? Are we frustrated? When we think about those things, those can hinder us in the reception of a message. And then psychological. If you're in stress, anxiety, if I showed you an image that creates a past experience trauma revisited, right? All of a sudden you see something on the screen, you're like, oh my goodness, right? It can create interference and you'll lose the message. So think about it. There's so many ways we can lead our audience astray, unfortunately. So we have to be purposeful with our communication. We're going to talk about being purposeful in the chapters to come. The seventh element of communication is outcome. This is important to you because this is your grade, right? The grade you receive from me is your outcome. Did you pass the class? Did you do well in the class? For some of us, we want an A in this class, right? And that's fair. So when we think about outcomes, there's internal and external, short and long term. So when I think about internal outcomes, did I deliver the speech in a timely manner? Did I convey the words that I needed to convey for me internally? Right? Did I affect change within you internally? Did I change your life externally to make it better? Did I create the change as a short-term change or a long-term change? There's so much that goes on here, and the book talks about it. Some people will take a change and they'll only apply it in a short term, maybe that day. Other people may change, it may be life-changing and it affects their life for years to come. A perfect example of that is me trying to convince you to be a bone marrow donor, right? It's important. We can help others. It's painful, but we could provide life to someone. We can extend their life. And that's huge. But each one of us would have to make that choice on whether or not we're going to do it. Talked about this earlier, encoding, putting me, I'm the one encoding right now. I'm putting my thoughts and feelings into words. I'm putting the information into words or symbols and relaying it to you. You are the one decoding. You're taking my words and symbols and turning it into a personal. When we think about communication models, all of them use this. All of them have some process of using encoding and decoding. And face-to-face, we're doing both. I'm encoding and I'm decoding feedback from you. So, it's truly important. All right, so understanding the process of public speaking, we have models of communication. Typically, they're linear, transmissional, meaning right now, kind of what I'm doing, unfortunately, is, and I hate teaching this way, but it must be for online, is linear. I'm bowling, I'm throwing information at you, and you're kind of like picking it up and grabbing it. Some of it might get past you, but the point is, I'm just chucking it your way, unfortunately, right? I try to teach in a much more interactive manner, and I think you guys can feel that within my communication with you. I teach in an interactive. I like to throw out ideas. I ask questions. I get you thinking. I want to hear what it is you say, and I want us to try to create a higher meaning through interactive or even transactional, meaning I give you an idea, you give me ideas back. If we look at this photo, it's just that, transactional. I'm giving you information, you're getting a message, and then you're sending me back feedback. So it's a transactional type of communication. Almost done. In conclusion soon, okay? But not quite there yet. What's the value of public speaking? Well, it's simple. First of all, it is a necessary skill you will need throughout your life. Unfortunately, you can't get away from it. I've had students even try to argue that with me, and then yet come back to me years later and say, you were right. So can be career based, meaning if you're wanting to succeed in your career, you're probably going to end up in a leadership role, and you have to deliver a message to your audience of peers, your audience of coworkers. Academically, you're expected to give presentations in college because it trains you for the real world, right? And personally, public speaking can help you personally gain better critical listening and thinking skills. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you ways to do that. I'm going to help you gain confidence and overcome your fears through public speaking. I'm going to help you find your voice. I'm going to influence your world, and you're going to influence my world. And undoubtedly, through public speaking, you will make friends. So when we think about public speaking, timing is evident, everything. Each one of the speeches have regulated time limits you have to adhere to. Please make sure you adhere to them. Okay. Public speaking also requires muscle memory. So make sure that, again, you're communicating through nonverbals in a positive manner. We're going to talk about that. We're going to dive into that one. Like all communication, public speaking has content and relationship dimensions. What I like you to do is think about good public speakers. And I want you to emulate them a bit. Don't imitate them, emulate them, meaning take away some of their best traits and maybe try to do that in your own way. I'm going to teach you how to build on your strengths and address your weaknesses within public speaking. And I want you to remember the power of the story. This is your second video I want you to watch. So again, remember the power of the story. I'm going to post these videos too on our announcements page. Watch these videos. The power of the story is real. I live in the power of the story every day as an advertiser, as a communicator for mass media. I live in that power every day. That's it for us today. Watch the two videos. I'll post them in the announcement section. I want you to think about what we talked about today. Rewatch the video if you want to. Rewatch those videos on YouTube if you want to, but watch them at least once. And then we're going to dive into chapter 2 next. We're going to talk about great speakers. We're going to learn some more. I'm here to help. You are going to do well in this course because I believe in you. I'm not Mr. Rogers. I don't put on sweaters. Sorry. But what I will tell you is if you'll put in the effort, you'll do well. That's it. Thanks so much for being a part of this class. I'll see you next time.